Okay, this is the vlog for June 13th, 2018. And I just did something that I don't usually do, which is spend like half an hour watching the last 3 days vlogs. And that's because I let a lot of stuff slip through the cracks. E3 is mostly done. Every major company has done their major press conferences. And while some of them like to save up a little surprise, usually they save up the surprise till well after the show. I expect to see some interesting news next week because when it comes to promoting stuff like this, a lot of times the last word is the biggest word. Um, it either takes a very, very big game that made a very big impact and turned a lot of heads to be the thing that gets talked about. I know in my group of friends, everybody last year was talking about Monster Hunter World because it came out of nowhere and it visually blew away just about everything else at the show. I know that wasn't the big one for a lot of people. Super Mario Odyssey was what a lot of people were talking about because I think that might have been, I don't know if that was like the first time playable demos came out or what. But anyway, getting off topic here. I want to talk about stuff that was slipping through the cracks. So let's start with one called Daemon X Machina, which is actually Daemon and then the letter X and then Machina rather than EX Machina, which means from the machine. I'm sure that's what they're going for. Daemon X Machina would mean demon from the machine or demon from a machine. But aside from the name, the really interesting thing is that this is a robot game. This is a game where you pilot a giant robot to defeat other giant robots in battle with guns and swords and stuff. But the mecha designer for this game is none other than Shoji Kawamori, who is one of the most famous mecha designers of all time. He was responsible for Macross, the mecha designs in much of Ghost in the Shell, a show called Aquarian, Patlabor. He did a couple Gundam designs for Gundam 0083 Stardust Memory. He is a big name. He's a really big deal. He's considered one of the best, and I consider him probably my personal favorite mecha designer. He's sort of like, if you know comics at all, he's sort of like the Jim Lee of giant robots. Not the first guy, but somebody who made major leaps and did a lot for the entire genre. So, it's releasing for Nintendo systems. Don't know when exactly. But the producer on the game is actually the producer for Armored Core 2. And the whole game has a very Armored Core vibe. Like they wanted to get together and make an Armored Core game exactly the way they wanted to without From Software telling them what to do. Which makes sense. From Software has been busy with their own title, which we'll go into now. It's called Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. And anybody that plays Dark Souls, Demon Souls, or Bloodborne is going to look at that and go, aha, I see what this is. It's totally a Demon Souls, Dark Souls game. Except it's not. Dark Souls specifically had a very dark medieval fantasy vibe to it. Very European fantasy. Bloodborne had a slightly more esoteric, I believe it was sort of English countryside inspired rather than the more European whatever. This game is very Japanese. It's being published by Activision rather than Namco Bandai, who did all of the other Dark Souls and Demon Souls games. And it just sort of feels different. Like instead of dying and returning to a bonfire, for example, you can resurrect on the spot and keep fighting the boss or enemy that killed you. That's very different. I think they're trying to identify some of the weaknesses with the Souls games and rectify them with this title. And that's cool. But it's not the only Japanese period game, because this Sekiro game takes place in a feudal Japanese world full of monsters and demons and weird-looking guys, and the main character has this sort of wooden cybernetic arm because he loses his original arm in a duel with a samurai. There's another game with some samurai duels called Ghosts of Tsushima, I want to say. It's made by the same people that did Infamous for the PlayStation, for PlayStation 3 and 4. And Ghosts is set during the first Mongol invasion of Japan, and it's much more realistic. This isn't a game about demons or mutated monstrosities. It's about a country under siege and how that sort of shaped the people that lived there. It is without a doubt inspired by the films of Akira Kurosawa, and it is breathtakingly beautiful, not just in its graphic fidelity, which is very good, but in the way it's presented. The trailer itself ends with this amazing samurai duel between two characters with the setting sun in the background. So much of the character or the colors and details of these two figures just turns to a black silhouette as they fight one another, and it was amazing. It is definitely a game I'm interested in picking up. I love visual games, especially games that have a life and energy to them that make me go, wow. And this game had it in spades. So I touched a little bit on Spider-Man at the end of the Sony Day trailers, where I was talking a lot about Death Stranding. And this Spider-Man game, I want to say, is being published by Square Enix, but it's inspired by the style of game that the Arkham games were, the Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight games featuring Batman. But I think that Spider-Man, they're changing. It's a different development studio. It's not Rocksteady. So it's not the people that made Arkham. It's just a group of people that identified what worked in Arkham and are using a lot of those elements to make their own game that feels very different, because Spider-Man is very different. He's always telling jokes. Batman never tells jokes. So, what else? Nintendo had a pretty slim showing, all things considered. They spent 25 minutes on a trailer for Smash Brothers because they knew that's what people wanted. A game that probably sort of flew under the radar but was very important to me personally was Devil May Cry 5. This is not a sequel to the DMC game made by Ninja Theory. Devil May Cry 5, again, uses Nero, who is the primary protagonist from Devil May Cry 4. He's older, he's grittier, his demon arm's been taken and now he has a robotic one instead. We'll see how long that lasts. And he's still voiced by Johnny Young Bosch, who is a fantastic dude. He was in Power Rangers for a couple of seasons, I believe, and has just been very sort of cordial and fun-loving with the gaming community. And he's done voices in anime. He's the voice of a character in Yokai Watch, which sort of goes against form and is basically the polar opposite of the character that Nero is. Nero is the punk kid who was supposed to replace Dante in the Devil May Cry series, but there's no replacing Dante. And the guys who made the game sort of understood that, and a lot of people feared that it would be a Metal Gear Solid 2 situation where this new young protagonist nobody likes is forced on people, and you don't get to play as the character that you've always played in these games, and that would rub people the wrong way. Well, you do start off the game playing as Nero, and you spend quite a lot of time playing as Nero, but it's not 90% of the game like it was with Metal Gear Solid 2. It's about half and half. Roughly halfway through the game, maybe probably more accurately, a little less than half, you start playing as Dante. And then for the rest of the game, you basically spend an equal amount of time playing as Dante and Nero, switching between the two depending on the chapter that you're in. And honestly, overall, I just like the way Nero plays more than the way Dante plays. Dante's thing is that he has these 4 different styles that you can use that all work slightly differently and have special bonus effects. But trying to juggle between all of them, people that play Devil May Cry 3 loved that feature. I never played Devil May Cry 3, so I didn't know anything about it. And Nero was just sort of straightforward and just grabbing dudes and smashing them into other dudes, which is one of my personal favorite things to do in a video game. So, and it has all that old Devil May Cry style. It doesn't have a lot of angst this time around. We'll see. There's probably still going to be some drama and some soap opera in the story. Dante's in it. He's grown the beard. 2018 is the year the beards arrived. And that's another one I'm looking forward to. It's probably going to release on multiple systems. So I think I've managed to actually hit most of the other the other big things that showed up. But I mentioned that after E3, a lot of people like to sort of throw something out there so that their announcements aren't overshadowed by all the other news coming out of E3. And today, Arc System Works, the company responsible for Blaze Blue, the Dragon Ball Fighter Z game that came out this year, and many other popular games like Guilty Gear, have announced that they're working with the Trigger Animation Studio, who make Kill la Kill, Gurren Lagann, Furikuri, and Little Witch Academia, among others, probably to make a video game. And they're going to release more information in 2 days. So you better believe I'm going to try and make that a major point of my vlog. I love Trigger. They're one of my favorite animation studios. I love Kill la Kill. Dolly and the Franx is maybe not exactly what I prefer from them, but it's incredibly well made. I need to get caught up on that one, actually. I've got some stuff to get caught up on before I get back to work. Anyway. I had a good time with E3. I had a good time by talking to my friends. Usually I'm off of work and I don't have a lot of communication with people while E3 is going on. This year's different. I've fed off the hype, and sometimes it was annoying to have all these people saying different stuff and trying to watch a trailer while all that stuff was happening. But it definitely got me more excited. I think if I hadn't been watching these things with other people, I would have definitely missed a lot of stuff. And I don't think I'd be quite as excited as I am this year. So, if I find out any more really cool information over the next day or two, I'll try and include that in another vlog. I didn't spend any time talking about what I actually did all day, which was work on an adventure for D&D that I'm going to hopefully play with some of my friends. But I can talk about more of that tomorrow. So, until then, I'm Eric Spornitz, and tomorrow will be better.